What's happening, everybody? Facebook Live in studio with us. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for tuning in. We got Jordan G telling us this story. If you know it, let us hear your comments and opinions.
10 seconds.
And we're coming in live.
Coming in hot.
All right, everybody. Welcome back on Talk Recovery, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. We're live in studio. And don't forget, we have, we always need new members coming in. If you've thought about becoming a member, please join. Go to coopradio.org, click on donate. The only way this radio station runs is through our members, and let's keep it going. It's a great thing. It's a great place. Love being a part of Co-op Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. We're in studio with Jordan G. Personal story, always, I like to say, my favorite part of the show, because we get to hear, it's not like our other guests aren't real stories, but, always our guests are usually connected somehow with the downtown east side or the resources in BC, and it matters, right? So why don't, first of all, just tell us a little bit, like, how old are you?
I'm 26 years old.
26. Young buck, I like to say.
I don't feel young, but...
Yeah, right? So tell us a little bit about, what you've been through.
I think for myself, like, I've always known that I've been an addict. Ever since I was a kid, I always felt off or different. Like, you'd hang out with your friends in school and, people would, like, laugh at certain jokes, or there was always, like, this flow of communication between people, and I always felt like everything I said, like, man, no one laughed, or I always felt like the things I thought were funny, nobody else thought was funny, and, for myself and a lot of addicts, we went through trauma as a child, and I know, like, when I was 9 years old, I was molested, and I really felt that feeling from then on, was that, like, I always felt like I always had to prove myself, like what other people thought or was more important to me than what I thought. And it felt that way about my relationship with my father, relationship with my friends, in dating, like, I always felt this need to change who I was in order to be accepted. And when it came to drugs, I remember just, like, this whole thought came into my head. I was like, if I had drugs, people would like me. And for myself, the first thing I use is I smoke pot. But it didn't have the same effect on me as it did for other people. When I smoked pot, it completely introverted me. Like, I didn't have this ability to calm down or relax. Like, I almost became a victim of my own mind. Like, it totally zapped me out of the moment. I wasn't there anymore. But that concept of, like, if I had this, people wanted to hang out with me, and I carried on with that. And, as I grew older, like, I'm a kid and I don't have money, like, I wasn't working. But I was like, hey, like, if I go into my dad's room and steal his money, or if I steal his stash, like, hey, like, I'll have more. And then, like, then my friends will like me. And so, well, screw school. I'm going to skip school because my friends want to go and get high, so we'll do that. And all these decisions that I was making, all of a sudden there's these consequences. Oh, my dad's pissed at me, I'm failing school. But I didn't care. Like, that was a feeling that I had from very on. It was just like, I just want to keep not feeling the way that I'm feeling, and I want to keep having my friends. And so I keep stealing, I keep this, I keep that, and it doesn't fly for very long. I remember, at the age of 16 years old, I was homeless, and, like, going in and out of youth treatment centers, youth safe houses, like, stuff like that.
So how did it get to that spot where a 16-year-old becomes homeless? I mean, you were living with your dad, you said,
mm-hmm.
right? So what happened, that it took your dad to kick you out?
Well, actually, I was actually kicked out of his house at 15, but
okay.
there's another parent, right? So at the age of 15, I either had to face responsibility for me stealing from him, but I told him, kind of just gave him the middle finger, and I was just like, whatever, I don't need you, I'm just going to go live in my mom's house. And my mom's an addict herself, but I go stay at her house. So it only took a year of the same behavior. You know, she didn't kick me out. I walked out. I was living up north in Port St. John, and I thought I'd met this nice girl down in Maple Ridge. I'm gonna take my little cash that I own, and I'm gonna go live in Maple Ridge, right? And so at 16 years old, I was like doing my own thing, but I wasn't going to school. I was getting high, and I remember like it was a few months later. All my friends were doing the same thing down here. We were all just like missing school, getting high. But one by one, something went off in their brain. They're like, man, like I'm tanking my life right now. Like I'm flunking. My parents are choking me, and one by one, they're like, I'm gonna stop. And all of a sudden, boom, one would start going back to school, and another one goes back to school, and then all of a sudden, I'm alone. All my friends have gone back to school, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, but I want to keep getting high. Anything about my family or about my life. Like, I just really wanted to keep getting high, and you know, there was like this thing. You know, lots of people, they have fear about newer drugs, right? Like when you're a kid and you're smoking pot and you're drinking or whatever, you know, those are socially acceptable. But as time like went on, like as you move up to things like E or Coke or hallucinogenics, I never had that button where it was just like, man, I probably shouldn't do this. It was like, hey, you want some? Sure. And then I take it, and then I take it, and I take it. And, you know, my life slipped really, really fast until like the first time I went to treatment, I was 17 years old. It was a harm reduction program up in Carameas called Portage. And they pretty much took a bunch of youth and like put them out into like the boonies where like no one else lived. And it was more of like teaching you how to talk about your feelings, harm reduction program. And I was there for 9 months. You know, I did a bunch of school, but like you'd go home on home passes, and I would use and not tell anybody, and then I'd go back, and I'd only use things they couldn't piss test for. Like I didn't want to get clean, but I wanted my dad back in my life. I wanted like the benefits of like being clean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, my dad's trusting me again. That's great. But any chance I had to like do my own thing or what I wanted to do, like that's just what I wanted to do, right? And but the thing is, like I really suck at being a drug addict. Like I don't have like a really good like hustle about me. Like I can't, you know, I have a heart. I'm not cold-hearted, right? So it's like you stay using for a little bit, and it's just like it wears down on you, man. It wears down on your self-esteem, and like it's hard to maintain a job and a relationship and like these things that life has for you when you have no self-esteem, right? So I would always succumb to the drugs. I would always just like, this is just what I'm gonna do now.
Do you think at 17, when you're obviously accepting the fact that you need to go into an institution, like things are that bad, do you think there was any chance or what could have been different that could have got you to completely change your life at 17?
No,
Have you ever thought about that?
I was so self-centered. Like I look back at that, and I, you know, like you just have, like my dad's opinion matters so much to me. He was
Right.
like my hero growing up, right? And not even like that, man, like begging me, like, hey, like, you know, we can have this great life together. Like, you know, we can get you going, we can get you a job, all this, right? Like even him begging me to like stop, like it was just like deep down, like I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, right? And the choice had to come from within. So the reason why I stayed loaded until I was 23 years old was, it's just, I wasn't, like it changed from wanting to do what I wanted to do. I eventually just started to believe that this is what I was worth, that this pain, this suffering, this abuse, this drug abuse was like who I was, and there was no turning back. And in that time frame from being 17 to 23, like there's a lot of lines that I crossed, a lot of drugs I started using, a lot of things I started, you know, types of ways I've used changed. And
you were saying you wound up down here on the east side.
And yeah, and unfortunately, like the first time I came down here, my mom brought me down here because she's an addict herself. And you know, I had been using intravenous drugs like before that, but I had never come down here. I'd never gone to Insight. I've never gotten a handle or anything like that. And that was my first experience coming down here. And you know, as soon as you cross that line, as soon as you come down here, like everything's so easily accessible. Like the crime that you can do is so easy. Like to keep yourself going down here, it almost like fuels the fire to continue, right? Because you know, there's only so many times you can lie to your grandma, you can like lie to your parents, you can do this, there's only so many payday loans you can get, like, you know, because I couldn't handle a job because of how messed up I was. But when you're down here, there's so many more ways to use, there's so many more ways to exploit things. And you know, and the feelings that come with using with your family, the feelings like you're, because I have a heart, like I'm contributing to her demise. Like it compounds, it builds and builds and builds, and
Right.
I just want to forget. By the end of it, I wasn't getting high anymore. I just wanted to forget. I didn't want to feel anymore, and like I've been to treatment over 10 times. I've used, all the detox facilities in the downtown east side. I've used Insight, more times than I care to count. And in this interview right now is the first time I've walked down here since I got clean 3 years ago. And it was a feeling, a chill that came under me, because it's like, I've removed myself. I've become a different person, but like sometimes I forget where I came from. And not to say that I get cocky or arrogant, but just sometimes you forget exactly where you were. And a few of my friends that I write steps with, they work down here, and they also were down here as well. And we talk about it sometimes. We reminisce about like where we came from, but for myself, I don't have that same story as them where they've integrated themselves back in the community in a positive way.
Do you think you have to?
No, I don't.
To heal? Like, do you think you have to?
Well, something that like has been coming up for me is I have a tendency as someone in recovery is I don't like to face uncomfortable feelings, right? Like when it comes like in certain relationships, like that relationship with my mom, even though we speak together, there a lot of the times I choose not to deal with it properly because it's like it's uncomfortable. And
She's still an active addiction.
She may not be using the same way we used to, but
Okay.
there's still a lot of stuff going on for her, right? And so like it's something that's coming up in my 4 set of steps is like I need to start. I was speaking to Francis about this on the way here. Was that I need to start like dealing with my feelings appropriately and facing stuff, and not be afraid to admit that it makes me feel uncomfortable. Not being afraid to admit that like I don't know how to handle this, or like how because there's no amount of clean time, no amount of recovery that can really like you haven't ascended to like this next level. It's like as things come up day to day, like new relationships, old relationships, like right now I'm my partner and I, like, we're having a child and she's 17 weeks pregnant, and like the amount of effort and the amount of work that comes with going through that as like a relationship is huge.
Yep.
It's paramount. And that's what like the community aspect of recovery is so important, because staying clean isn't a struggle. Like not picking up that's been removed from me. But it's like, man, like every once in a while I just get smacked in the face with these raw emotions that I have no idea, because
never experienced before.
Oh.
Like if you haven't had a kid before, this is the first time you're experiencing what that feeling's like.
Mm-hmm.
The panic, right? The fear, the hesitation, the worry about, am I gonna be good enough? Am I, you know what I mean? Like,
what am I doing
as a father? Like, do I even have the skills? And it's definitely, as you're describing staying clean and having to deal with those uncomfortable feelings. I mean, I think that's what, I don't know, if we're consciously understanding that we're afraid of that by giving up dope, right? Like, why do people, choose to live in this, right? When, there's all of these examples of people changing their life. And it's just like, well, because we found something that's allowed us to get through some of the worst, like you say, traumas or relationships and thoughts and beliefs in our whole lives. And what do we do when we give that up? Right? Like, it's an uncomfortable situation. I mean, I find that all the time, like facing a new situation, right? Where it's just like, oh, I don't like how this is making me feel. And I feel this big, right? Like, I don't know how to cope with this situation. I don't know what the solution is, right? So how important is it for you that you're surrounded by people like that have had kids that are going through the same thing? People that have gone through the past that you've also gone through. Like you say, you're doing steps. I know what that means. What does that mean to our viewers and listeners?
For myself, I've tried many different ways to get clean. I've done harm reduction. I did some smart recovery ones. I've gone to different types of 12-step fellowships. I ended up doing NA. And for myself, I think like the worst feeling I had when I was loaded was that I just felt utterly alone. Like in this world, there wasn't a human being that knew exactly what I had gone through. And you know, I've done multiple sets of steps, but it's like if it wasn't for another addict making me feel safe enough to completely expose myself for like everything that I felt, everything that I had done, I don't know if I would have stayed clean. Because for a long time, like, you know, I'd be like telling somebody what had gone on for me, and I would just omit this one little detail, or I would change this one little fact in my story so that like if they rejected me, they weren't rejecting me, they reject that technically it's different, it's not me, right? And I think like when you're talking about like if I, you know, I'm having a kid and having other fathers around, like for myself, the first thing I did is I went and I got a sponsor that is a great dad and treats his partner with respect, and he's been married, and he's like a really strong influence in my community of recovery. And so I went and sought him out, and I'm like, hey, I'd like to write a set of steps with you. And you know, because like that feeling I had when I was a kid where like you asked me, hey, like could anything have been different, and what I didn't do was I refused to take responsibility for my actions. Like I would always have two options. It's like, okay, face the music, this is what I've done, you know, and then take my licks, whatever that is, you know, and the consequences, and make change. Or it would be like, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm just gonna go keep, you know, run away, and burn bridges. And you know, in recovery, it's full of decisions that you have to make. It's like, am I gonna continue to be the same guy, or am I gonna do something different? And you know, there's lots of suggestions along the way. And one of the ones that like was given to me early on in recovery was there's this pattern I have that when I get clean, all I'd want to do is date girls and go to the gym and get huge and make a lot of money. Like it was just like, you know, like, oh man, like, oh, I feel great, man. I've eaten a couple sandwiches, man. I'm gonna go to the gym. I mean, you know, I'm gonna go get this hog, you know. And I never wanted.
So continue to hide, basically.
Yeah, exactly, right. Behind the mask, behind the ego, right. And so I got clean, and you know, the suggestions are like, hey man, like why don't you like not go to the gym and not talk to any women, and they didn't even give me like a time, like, all right, 2 months. It was just like period, and I was just like, all right,
devastated.
You know? Yeah, you know, and I'm like, okay, whatever, man, because I was so fed up with that feeling. Like on my last relapse, I went from like in one day, like I woke up in the morning and I had a job, a girlfriend, a condo, a car, like an entire life, and like I bought a plane ticket and came down here, and I OD'd outside of Insight, and I woke up and all my money, all my clothes, everything was robbed from me, and I was like standing on the corner of Columbia and Hastings, and like in a matter of like 6 hours, I went from having a life to like nothing. And I felt this feeling of powerlessness that I'd never felt in my entire life, because it was like,
wow,
I chose to use, and that's where it got me, man.
And I mean, you hear the cliches, you know, like you can accumulate as much as you want on the outside, and you know, money doesn't make you happy, and all those things, but until you actually experience that for yourself, you know what I mean? And that's a tough thing, right? Like, you know, if that doesn't motivate you to try something new, you know, and believe wholeheartedly that, yeah, having all the stuff together, a life, didn't keep you clean. You know, I mean, that's a hard lesson to learn. Hey?
Yeah.
If you're at that spot where you're going through pattern after pattern after pattern, you know, getting clean, getting loaded, getting clean, getting loaded, what, like, it wasn't the outside, you know, outside here, it wasn't the downtown east side ending up there that, oh, this is now my bottom, right? Like, you know, you're describing a bottom basically from, you know, high school, right? What is it about the healing process? Like, you must have been mad at your dad for kicking you out, right? Trying to prove to him, I don't need you. Molested at 9, like that does some stuff to a 9-year-old brain that trying to live with as an adult, like, because there's a lot of that story in addiction, right? The traumas. What did you do? Like, how did you have to just forget about it? Did you have to accept it? Did you have to, you know, forgive the individual? what was your healing process in that?
That is, to this day, is still a process. And it comes up the most when you enter into a relationship. I remember, I had avoided my entire life getting into meaningful relationships with like other men as friends or like partners with women, right? And because I was just so terrified of like being betrayed, and I didn't realize that was what I was doing. Like I would, I'd meet people and, I'd be like, okay, cool, they're really cool people. And then as soon as like I had to reach that point where I had to like expose myself and become vulnerable, I would walk away. And, it's been one of the hardest things in recovery has been like learning how, because I can sit here, I've been in recovery enough times, I can sit here and tell you, like, man, I've been to the downtown east side, I've done this, I've done that, like expose like these things, these things about myself that like some people would be like, oh, that's bad. It's like, for me, that's easy, but it's to sit in front of a person that you don't know anything about and be like, man, like I have a really hard time connecting with my girlfriend. I have a really like to admit that like that abuse has like now affected me like in physical relationship, like when I'm an adult, and how hard that can be, and like, and who do I call and who do I talk to and what groups do I go to, and it all comes from like when I was brand new and when I chose to, there's a member of the NA community that works on the downtown east side in a detox facility around here, and I've been to that place 20 times like around there since I've been clean, and every time I went there he was always there like talking to me in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep and like telling me that people loved me and people wanted me to come back, and in that time when I went there and I sat there with them, and like I've been on opiate replacement therapies like numerous times, on Suboxone, methadone, and I just remember like I had this feeling like this time where like I turned it down. I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like I want to be clean. And he sat down and he talked with me and he helped me get into treatment. And like he showed up. I remember because I had no clothes. That same guy showed up in the place that I was clean, and he went to Walmart and he bought me like a 6-pack of underwear just so I had enough clothes to like get by. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like that feeling that man showed up in my life for years, and then like I leave, and all of a sudden he shows up and he's there to say like, I'm glad you're home.
There's amazing people, in downtown east side, just in the world, right? Like that'll buy you underwear and tell you that you're worthwhile. Like, what a great combination.
I was stoked.
And knowing, like, getting to a spot where you believe it yourself, that your past isn't going to dictate, your today or your tomorrow anymore, right? That, like, you have everything you need to stay clean and move forward in life. That's amazing, man. And you know what? Thanks for pointing on that, because people talk about that, in a therapy room. Right, and just between two people, and no one knows, no one hears the story. The person that's dealing with themselves somewhere out there thinking, I don't know what to do with this, right? They don't hear the story, right, of what it's going to take. That it's getting clean, it's developing a community, engaging with some friends, working on yourself, and admitting that it's a continual process. It's nothing that got cured the day you got clean, right? So that's a big deal. We got a couple more minutes. What's life today? Like, what do you see it becoming?
I think the biggest thing that gave me cure from like all those things that have like haunted me my entire life was, you speak about in NA, in 12-step fellowship, about the importance of like helping the new guy, right? And so for myself, like, I've sponsored many people, but there was like this one guy that like, when I met him, it wasn't like in a treatment facility, like I just went to a meeting, and he was a homeless youth, and just like myself, using the same drugs I was using down here. And I remember he's like, yeah, can you sponsor me? And he was loaded, and he used to call me like in the middle of the night all the time, like just super in psychosis, like the same things that I went through, right? And like fast forward a while, that guy, he's 19 years old, has like over a year clean, and he went through almost all the same trauma, all the same like heartache that I went through. And I remember the day of his cake, like I was sitting in this meeting, and from like the entire hour I cried from the beginning to the end. And a man who never wanted to feel emotion, a man that like ran away from any type of like heartache or like uncomfortability. You know, I was sitting there and like his mom wrote this letter and she like thanked me for giving her son back, and in a lot of ways that man like gave me my, like helped me get me my life back. And so moving forward, like, you know, all this stuff can happen, all this stuff we go through, and we can get lives and stuff like that, but like that feeling I had that day when he took his 1 year clean was like what like reminded me of like why I'm here. And that's what life is supposed to be about, you know?
Jordan, thanks for sharing that, man. Thanks for coming in here today.
Thank you.
That's it. You know, if you've ever asked yourself like why me, you know, and can't see a future and don't have hope, like just give it some time. And when somebody is living their life and having things in their life and have changed their life because they met you, you'll understand. And thanks for sharing that. Thanks for tuning in Facebook Live. Thanks for listening on Talk Recovery, Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5. This is Tripping Daisy. Rise.